We're grateful to be joined with Rick Maranon, thank you so much, for Fox 23. Rick has spent years telling the stories of Oklahomans and shining light on the issues that matter most in our communities, including education. Rick, thank you for being here, and thank you for moderating tonight's town hall. We're excited to have you here, and we're excited to turn this over to you.
Thank you. I'll stand up. Okay, sure. What a blessing. Well, thank you. So again, I'm just going to reiterate before I do ask the questions. No campaigning, nonpartisan. We are here to have an open discussion. We are here to get real data from Oklahoma educators and real classroom experience from them. The goal of tonight is simple. We are going to listen, we are going to learn, and we are going to explore what our schools, our teachers, and our students need to succeed. Just a few guidelines. Again, this is not a debate or a campaign event. We are here to focus on education. If there is any campaigning, I'm going to rein it in. We are here to focus on education. We are going to be respectful, brief, and focused on solutions so we can hear from as many voices as possible. And again, we'll have the QR code for you to submit your questions as well. So here's how tonight is going to work. We will begin with the moderated discussion. I'll ask a core set of questions informed by data from Oklahoma educators. After that, we will open it up to you all, the audience, to submit your questions. Our panelists will have a chance to respond, and we will keep things moving so everyone has time to participate. And now I'm pleased to introduce your panelists for the evening. First up is Cheryl Wilkinson. Cheryl Wilkinson serves as Executive Director of Teaching and Learning for Bixby Public Schools with 20 years in education and a background in special education and reading. She focuses on district-wide instructional excellence and empowering teachers to improve student outcomes. Next to her is Dr. Kelly Forbes. He is an education leader and a consultant with multilingual education, dual language programs, and district innovation. He currently serves as an adjunct professor and works with schools nationwide to strengthen outcomes for divisive learners. Next to him, State Representative Melissa Provenzano. She's a lifelong Tulsan and has a background in education. She brings a policy perspective focused on practical solutions and collaboration to support Oklahoma schools. Next to her is Stacy Woolman. She's a Tulsa Public School Board member, speech-language pathologist, and dyslexia interventionist. She is deeply committed to literacy and ensuring public schools are fully supported to serve every student. And next to her is Betty Collins, a U.S. history teacher at Union Public Schools 8th grade center with 18 years of classroom experience. She holds a master's degree in education policy and leadership and serves as in multiple teacher leadership roles focused on improving student outcomes and instructional clarity. So I'll have a seat. And first up, we'll go to Cheryl Wilkinson for question number 1. If Oklahoma is serious about improving literacy outcomes, what does strong district level implementation actually require in curriculum, professional development, and ongoing teacher support, and where do systems most often fall short?
Thank you so much. Good evening. It's a pure privilege to get to be here tonight, and I'm talking about two of my very favorite professional topics, teaching kids to read and teaching or supporting teachers who teach kids to read. I think this is obviously something that's on all of our minds with our literacy numbers in our state, and I'm hoping to clarify or bring some clarity into the process that we utilize to teach kids to read and what that looks like. I'm going to focus in on kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade. Of course, we teach reading strategies all the way through 12th grade, but I think we're talking about teaching those fundamentals of reading, which really happen in kindergarten, 1st and 2nd. In order to do that, I'm going to try to paint this picture of what this looks like. You may have heard about the body of research that has come out over the last 20 years that is called the science of reading. And I hope that you take comfort in hearing that it's called the science of reading. That means there's a formula behind it and it will work when we implement it. Unfortunately, it's not that simple. Teaching reading is actually really, really complex and difficult. I don't know if you've ever heard that there is brain research that supports the fact that our brains are not hardwired for reading, to learn to read. Contrastly to that, our brains are hardwired for speaking and language, for learning languages, so that we pick up on languages. However, you can't pick up on reading. Reading has to be taught, and reading has to be taught systematically and in a specific sequence, and that's where the science of reading comes in. The science of reading talks about 5 major components. I'm not going to get into the nuances of what those components are, but they have to be taught, like I said, systematically and in a very specific sequence. So, having said that, there's this trajectory of learning to read, and it's developmental. So students come in and they have to learn things in a very specific order when we first receive them in kindergarten. So I say all that to say this. Imagine we have a brand new first grade teacher come into our district, and we're onboarding her into her brand new classroom. She may have graduated from one of our local universities and she's ready to teach first grade. We usually get a couple of days of training before school starts to prepare that teacher for all the things that she needs to be prepared for as she goes into her launch for the school year. As she does that, she's going to learn how to put in for a sick day, and how to learn how to put in absences, and how do you put in grades, and how do I send my newsletters, and There's so much to train teachers on right at the beginning of the year. She'll go into her classroom. She's going to establish a space where students feel welcome to learn, and hopefully is excited to welcome her families in on those first days to school. And then we hope that she'll use all of the curricular resources that we've provided with fidelity to follow this science of reading, right? So we have resources for teaching reading, writing, spelling, science, social studies, all the things. And I'm saying all this to say, teachers are working hard. This is very hard work that they're doing, and it's complex, and it requires all of this work and effort to do all of this and do all of it well. And then, to add one more complexity to it, when we have students coming into kindergarten, we can have students as much as 2 years behind. On day one, the first day we get to have them in school. The first steps of learning to read are all auditory. So the pre-reading skills are singing nursery rhymes, like when I was little, right? Singing songs, learning vocabulary by seeing print in their environment. All of those pre-reading skills happen before they ever come to school. So by our Oklahoma kindergarten reading standards, we could have students, like I said, up to 2 years behind from day one. So my first grade teacher, as she comes into her classroom, she could be looking at her class and she can start her first grade curriculum and teach it with fidelity moving forward. But then she's going to have to find gaps for students who have reading gaps and then go back and fill those gaps. Because the science of reading says we have to teach reading developmentally, she's going to have to go back and find where are those gaps for each of those students and pull them forward. This is incredibly complex, nuanced work of data analysis to go back and do all of this. And this is from a teacher who maybe came to us with some pedagogy and learning about the science of reading and all of the instructional strategies needed to teach reading well. And right now, I know you're not surprised to hear that we have a teacher shortage in the state of Oklahoma, right? And so I've gone to job fairs, and we have very few candidates for graduating from our local universities into education, and then we're all fighting over them. We're all competing for this handful of graduates. And so then we've offered emergency certifications in our state over the last several years. And I want to say I'm incredibly thankful for these professionals who know that we have a teacher shortage. They maybe got a degree in another area, and they're going to give teaching a try. One of my favorite teachers is at our high school, and he got a degree in engineering, decided he didn't want to be an engineer, and is now a chemistry teacher, and he's fantastic, and we're so thankful to have him. But when we're talking about the challenges for curricular resources, professional development, and ongoing support, when we're hiring teachers who do not have a background in education, we not only need to onboard them and train them in all of our district processes and on all of their district materials, and then we also are going to level that playing field and hopefully teach them the instructional strategies they need to be successful in the classroom. It's just incredibly complex work. I'm very hopeful because it will work. There is a science and an art to teaching, and so it will work, but we do need time and an investment in resources for our schools so that we can be successful in this process.
Thank you. Next question is for Dr. Forbes. Oklahoma classrooms are more diverse than ever. How do we ensure that multilingual learners and students from different cultural backgrounds are seen as assets and not obstacles? and what systems need to shift to truly support them?
Thank you so much. I am incredibly honored and excited to get to share the stage with these amazing educators. So thank you very much for being here as well. This topic right here, this is my passion, and I'll tell you why. It all came from a teacher. I am from Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, and it was because of a high school Spanish teacher. I don't know if you all remember whenever you took a modern language or a world language, but it was an old practice that you would pick your name in the book, right? It's an old practice, should not be repeated, right? Anyhow, I chose the name Julio. I thought Julio would be a fun Spanish name, and then my teacher looked at me and she said, "Sabes, no eres un Julio, eres un Kelito con cariño. You're not a Julio, you're a little Kelly with love." And I was just like taken aback by it. And so I fell in love with this teacher. And if you can imagine, in high school, not everyone wants to take a world language. So I really wanted to make her feel like she was doing such a great job. It was because of her passion for it that I decided to major in that. And so all these experiences at 15 years old, becoming bilingual and biliterate and bicultural through that, changed my whole perspective. So whenever I got into education, I started teaching 6th through 8th grade, self-contained, newcomer students, many who were refugees, and there were 11 countries and 9 languages represented in that classroom. And I have to tell you, those students were by far the best professors that I ever had in my entire life. They taught me so much, and I came alternatively certified. We were talking about this prior to this, but to your point, I came with my degree in Spanish and in arts background. So I didn't know what to do. All I knew is that the show must go on. So the first thing that I did was listen to them. I learned a whole lot from them, and it was through their educational trajectory, their experience, bringing their culture in, that I learned so much. And I thought, you know, there's something to this. And a lot of the times we hear names of students, and so government would call them at one point, now English learners, but before limited English proficient students. And that word limited really took away what students are coming in with. And so I try to remind people, these students are taking a language proficiency assessment every year to show that they are acquiring the language of English. And this is really like a gifted and talented assessment, because there are, right here where we are at TCC, other community colleges, universities, where they get degrees in translation and interpretation, and these students are walking into our schools bringing all of their culture, bringing all of their language, bringing all of these strengths and these assets to our classrooms every single day. And the great part is that whenever you really leverage that, you recognize how English is connected to so many other Romance languages, right? And so this helps when it comes to even science of reading with background knowledge and prefixes and suffixes and what this looks like. And even learning to read in another language helps you with your literacy skills that you have in the English language also. And so whenever I'm going around and I'm doing really fun trainings with different teachers, I tell them, I remember taking the GRE to get into a doctorate program. And as I'm doing the reading, the word castigate comes across, and I'm thinking, I've never heard of this word in my entire life. And it clicked in my head in Spanish, castigar, that's cognate. And so I'm making this cross-linguistic connection right here, and I have this aha moment on this time test, so I have to go back and focus and finish the test. But I think, wow, here I am as a full-grown adult trying to get into a doctorate program, using my second language to help me in my first language to get into a doctorate program. If it's good enough for a doctorate program, I said, well, it's good enough for the state test, it's good enough for the GRE, right, for OSTPs as well. So I want us to take a step back and consider, out of the 700,000 plus students that we have right here, 13% are multilingual. That's about 90,000 students right here. And the more that we can celebrate them and understand the assets, again, that they're bringing to our classroom, leveraging that does not put them behind. It actually advances other monolingual peers. And it helps them in their trajectory when it comes to careers, when it comes to jobs, when it comes to coming back into our school systems. We have over 170 languages represented in Oklahoma. Not a lot of people know that, and it's not just in the metropolitan areas of Oklahoma City as well as in Tulsa, but also in the Panhandle, Guymon, for example. There are so many rich spots within our 700,000 student population, that if we will continue to leverage that and help the students recognize how wonderful that is, that helps even our modern languages as well, our world languages that we're teaching. And Oklahoma does have the seal of biliteracy, and many people don't know that. And this is a seal that any student, whether it be myself, with Senora Atkins at 15 years old, acquiring another language, or if it's with our multilingual friends that we have and they're going through a process, they can take an assessment to show that they have fluency in English and another language, and that gives them the seal of biliteracy on their transcript and diploma, and this helps them get into whatever job that they want, or to get a scholarship for university, or what their career tech trajectory might look like as well. And so whenever we have that mindset of subtractive bilingualism or deficit-based or limited in some way, we're really missing out on the opportunity to celebrate not just the benefits of multilingualism, which one benefit is that it prevents the onsets of Alzheimer's and dementia by 4 to 7 years. So if nothing else, let's give our students, I see some thumbs up out there, but let's give our students some health benefits to this as well. And the whole time that we're doing this, we're acquiring English even at a faster rate. And I'd be remiss not to mention, here in Oklahoma, the University of Central Oklahoma has a wonderful conference called the Multicultural Education Institute. And Oklahoma also is an affiliate of NAVE, which is the National Association for Bilingual Education. And we have an affiliation right here in Oklahoma. And so I just know that if someone like me can have my whole life trajectory changed because of a teacher who introduced me not just to a language, but to another culture, it really built my whole level of socio-cultural competence and what that means whenever I'm interacting with other people from different places and different backgrounds. And I've been fortunate to also be a principal of a school where our mission was one child, 2 languages, unlimited possibilities. And those students were leaving that elementary school bilingual, biliterate, bicultural, by choice.
All right.
And it's been fantastic. So I celebrate all of our multilingual friends. So thank you very much for that question.
I actually need to moderate myself. I broke a rule, but I will open up the topic if anyone has any thoughts on, and we will go back to Cheryl's question as well. But first, does anyone else have any thoughts on diverse learners and what systems need to do to support them?
I wanted to ask, you said something about there was a certificate or something included on their diploma. Can they speak another language? What was that called?
Yes, so the question is, there's a seal that students can get. So this is it does come from the State Department of Education. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that the majority of the states in the United States of America do participate, and Oklahoma is one state that does, and it is the seal of biliteracy, meaning that you are showing that you have proficiency in English as well as in another language. And that can be Spanish, Mandarin, Vietnamese, there's a whole list of different languages.
Do they include Native American language?
Not to my knowledge yet, and part of that comes in showing the proficiency levels that are accessible from another assessment. However, I am a big advocate and proponent for that to be part of the conversation, working with our tribal nations to figure out how we can maybe have something like that as well. And I'm thank you again for that question. This also includes sign language. So whenever we're talking about bilingualism, it's not just speaking necessarily in a language, but it's also sign language, and that counts through the bilingual count that our State Department counts every single year also. So all I know is that whenever I'm in a training and I talk to anyone and I ask, hey, will you raise your hand if you're bilingual, if anyone here is bilingual, multilingual, I ask, okay, are you behind any of your peers? And they always say no. So it doesn't get you behind, it only gets you ahead.
Ms. Woolley,
Yeah, I would just say I had the fortune of having 3 children who also went to school at the school where Dr. Forbes was the principal. And so my own children are actually bilingual. One definitely stronger than the other two, but that's a whole other conversation. But as a speech pathologist, there is so much to be learned from these students who have more than one language. And as Dr. Forbes said, which is hard for me to say, as Kalito said, it is truly an advantage throughout our lives to be bilingual. It's not something that I am, and I think that it's critically important that we recognize that these students, when they do go through our programs, when they come in as language learners, typically by the time they finish that part of their schooling, they are actually ahead in every area of academics in comparison to our monolingual students who have started off only speaking English in their homes and are only speaking English at the point that they're taking those tests, say, in high school. So for anyone to believe that there is any sort of negative connotation around our English language learners is really, I would say, unfortunate, and people who think that are really missing out on not only a cultural experience in which we can grow as human beings, but also recognizing that their cognitive abilities are going to carry them so much further than what my monolingual brain will. So I think to even begin to think of that as a negative is just such is a deficit on the part of the person who thinks that.
One last part, just because this is so important, and I did make a note, because I did want to say this, and that this proves your point right here, is that biliterate students, first of all, are less likely to drop out of high school. They are more likely to go to college. They also get higher paying jobs, and they have fewer discipline issues in school as well. And then the other part of this is that this helps with state security, economic competitiveness, scientific advancement that we can have in our state, and it also helps with just equitable public access for other of our friends that may need help with other linguistic support. So it's just a big, huge benefit all the way around for everyone.
So did anybody else want to do a follow-up? Let me ask a follow-up on that. Last year, the legislature voted to make second language learning optional if you're not going to college. What are your thoughts on that? And did we do some damage there? Because you've listed some great statistics there. Do you feel that is possibly at risk or a threat? And I'll open it up to everybody. Your reaction to that vote last year?
I'll just say this real quickly because I want to hear everyone else. But we used to have a big focus in the country in bilingual and multilingual education in early childhood, which showed higher levels of literacy as well. During the time in the era of Sputnik, for example, all of that funding had shifted over into what this looks like in our secondary schools and in our high schools. And I just want to give that historical precedence a little bit because it hasn't always been that way. And I do believe that it's going to be a very big disadvantage to our communities and to our state and to our students not having that opportunity. But at the same time, I also understand that that may not be what everyone wants to study and do. And so I believe that it can be a much bigger conversation, but I think if we just change the mindset and the understanding of the advantages and the benefit of what it is to be bilingual and multilingual, I think that would change the conversations that we do have in our secondary schools. And that's my 5 cents.
I'm happy to weigh in. I remember that vote. It was divided our caucus. But personally, I think there are only so many hours in the day and so many days in the calendar year, and there are a lot of new technology, new curriculum, new ways of thinking about the world that our current system just doesn't have the bandwidth for. And I believe that was the focus on, do you want to learn a computer language? Is there a science and technology course that you would prefer to take, or do you want to take a software development language, which is sort of its own language in its right, and it evolved, and as a part of that evolution, the world language requirement was made, a true elective that students could pick. So I see the benefit on both sides, but I also recognize the value of being bilingual. But it is time truly for us to evolve and look around at all the other things that are happening and catch up to where the world is for kids.
Any other thoughts on this topic? Bridget? Okay.
I was just going to add, with the new graduation requirements, I know for us, we've really been able to dig into offering options for students. And I do think that's what has opened up for us and opened up for our students, is we now have 17 pathways of elective credits that students can choose from. So they'll really be able to dive in and find things that they want to study. So I do love that opportunity for students, but I know there are two sides to that story too.
Yeah.
Just quickly, I think that there's a way possibly to potentially combine those two, right? And I'd love to see the option of having some more electives at the elementary level.
Yes.
And introducing those languages early on, and so that students choose to continue that pathway when they get to the secondary level.
I agree, because I mean, now we're doing keyboarding in the elementary, and I mean, I remember typing was 10th grade back in the day, and I think young kids are just so capable of doing so much more at lower levels. In the middle school, having been a principal of a middle school myself, there's all kinds of wiggle room. Just because of the grace that the state gives you on graduation requirements, that we can really be creative if we wanted to be.
One more thing to follow up on that is that we also know that the language window is much younger. So if we actually wanted to have our students be bilingual or multilingual, they would be learning when they came in, even before elementary school. So through 4 is actually the best window. So if we truly wanted our students, like I said, to be bilingual, they'd be learning it early. And high school is generally too late. There are not very many people like Dr. Forbes who became bilingual after taking a high school class. I'm sure many people in this room could raise their hand and say they took a class in high school and can maybe say 1 or 2 words in said language and maybe not even know what they are. So if we actually wanted to get that, if we wanted people to be bilingual, we would do that entire thing differently.
Let me go back to Ms. Wilkinson's question. I'm sorry I didn't give y'all a chance to respond. I'll read it again if anybody would like to weigh in. If Oklahoma is serious about improving literacy outcomes, what does strong district level implementation actually require in curriculum, professional development, and ongoing teacher support? Where do systems most often fall short? Would anyone like to weigh in? Okay.
This is my 18th year in the classroom in Oklahoma, and in those 18 years, I've probably gone through 18 different next best thing in education. So one thing that you said that really stuck out to me was the longevity and this long-term planning. It can't just continue to be the next best thing. It doesn't work. As an 8th grade teacher, I am just now starting to see the gains that were lost in the elementary school during COVID. So we have to be able to trust educators that they know what is working in the classrooms and to let them continue to be the reading experts. We have to invest funding into literacy. That's the only way to make it work. And funding doesn't necessarily mean in what's the next best, brightest curriculum. That funding might be into teachers who have been trained in the science of reading and know what they're talking about.
Yes.
This isn't exactly something that district level folks have a lot of choice in, but if they have the funding to have appropriate sized classrooms when students are learning how to read, that would be incredibly helpful. That's just one little thing. And maybe teachers who are qualified to teach when they walk in the door. As a speech language pathologist, I didn't have to learn anything when I went into the building as far as what I was doing. I mean, sure, did I need to problem solve for individual kids? Absolutely. But the things that I did need to learn were only relevant to the district. I needed to learn how to access things on my computer, and then I could focus on the work I needed to do with my students, who are all unique individuals. And I can't imagine being in a room with 27 kindergartners trying to teach them to read. If anybody has ever tried to teach a child to read, one at a time is pretty challenging. And those are kids who you know everything about, who have maybe no outside shortage of food, or a shortage of a place to sleep at night, or an absent parent, or a plethora of other things that are affecting them that society has not done anything to address. End childhood poverty and have enough qualified teachers in the classroom to have fewer students, and we will see an exponential growth that is even bigger than this Mississippi miracle. Just invest in our kids and society.
And I would like to add, our teachers who have gone through the university system know what they're doing. You know, when I left to come to office in 2018, you know, these teachers, it's so tired of the target being painted on the backs of teachers. It's just so exhausting, and we're driving away the talent by, and just really looking forward to education being boring for 1 year. And I'm hopeful that we're getting there. I think maybe we'll talk policy here in just a minute. Okay. Well, then I'm going to bow out now. All kinds of opinions. But I just, the support that we were providing, you know, those teachers are still in the classroom, still sticking with us. And gosh, I hope some of them start to come back.
Can I have
Yes,
one more thing?
absolutely.
Talking about the long-term planning, we were talking before we came out. We implemented a new way of teaching in our kindergarten, first, and second grade classrooms this year. We have a new curriculum. But it really is great. I promise. But we were only able to support teachers through that because we hired a literacy coach this year, and she has walked alongside all of our kindergarten, first, and second grade teachers as they've implemented it. And we are seeing these massive gains in spelling and writing, and I mean, it's so beautiful. I welcome anyone to come see this in action. It's so beautiful and it's working. But for us to see the gains, it's going to take years. Like I'm telling our middle school teachers, I'm like, I promise, we're doing some great things, and these lower grades, it's working and it's coming. But it's going to take patience and time for us to see the gains from that work.
So let me ask you a follow-up, and this is a great bridge to your question on the state level policy. You've talked about, all of you talked about trained educators coming out of the university system. I can't tell you how many times in the news at night I have to say the words emergency certification. Is emergency certification a blessing or a curse? Who wants to go first?
Yes, I've met a lot of amazing human beings that are emergency certified teachers. It's not for everyone. It's not for most people. And I think it's a lovely Band-Aid, and if we don't begin to invest in our teachers, every time we give our teachers a raise, guess what all the states around us do? So we are still 50th, and we are not keeping up just with the cost of living. But what you're seeing is fewer emergency certified teachers and a rise in adjunct teachers right now. And that is terrifying, and I think there's some policy decisions that we're making this year to help with that. But the current adjunct professor or teacher that comes into a high school needs a high school diploma.
Okay, so
And you
explain
can-
the difference.
Well,
Yes,
they don't have a college degree is the simplest way to say it. And so you could have someone that graduates at 18 in May, turn around and be in a classroom in August with the definition of adjunct. Now, I think there's a recognition of the problem that creates. It's quite an easy path to an entry-level job, right around 40 grand a year-ish with benefits. And so those are the things you'll see us addressing to kind of tighten that down just a bit.
Well,
But let's definitely talk about the rest of policy.
yes,
too.
while I have you, there is often tensions between the state level policy and local school realities.
Yeah.
How can we better align state decisions with what is actually happening inside Tulsa classrooms? We'll say Tulsa Metro classrooms as well. Tulsa Metro classrooms. And what role should local boards and legislators play in that alignment?
It's so funny, inside the Capitol, we're like, is today a local control day? But, to Betty's point, stop changing things every 2 years. What happens every 2 years? People like me run for re-election, and we have to say, look, we solved education, please re-elect us. And I think that's on both sides of the aisle. And legislators love to say, oh, well, I had this problem in my district with this parent, let's add this professional development training for underwater basket weaving. It's really important, got to do it every single year. And then somebody else wants to, I found this new reading for Cocker Spaniels that works in all Cocker Spaniels, and so we're going to throw $1 million at that, and then it doesn't work, and then 2 years later it's again. But now we're at a moment where I truly believe the intent is pure on the literacy conversation. How we get there, super creative at the moment. But there's a lot of conversation about the Mississippi Miracle, which is more aptly the Mississippi Marathon, because they've been doing it for a long time. But there's a renewed interest in the science of reading. But with that, you need a teacher raise. With that, you need the support for the science of reading and letters training. We have the Heroes pilot that was, at the top of things, like 15 literacy coaches that traveled the state to provide that support that you're talking about. And there are efforts to ramp that up to 100, to travel to 557 school districts over the next year, and then up to 500 to provide those supports in every school district, and then train the trainer, as you know. But we have to pick something and stay with it. We have an 8-year plan for bridges and roads. We can have an 8-year plan for kids that we agree that we're not going to change. And I guarantee, throw a dart at whatever curriculum that you want and give it to teachers, with some exceptions, and let them make it their own, and you'll see success. Everybody remembers, or at least when I was teaching, the goalpost would move on test scores every stinking year. And I was in a school that came off the list. Oh wait, you didn't, because we moved the goalpost, and it was all about this, and making sure we got more federal dollars in the building. And so we've got to prioritize kids, and doing that means we have to prioritize the teachers, pay them what they're worth, or else they go to Kansas, 2-hour drive north, 2-hour drive south, 2-hour drive east, 3-hour drive to the west. And those states are recruiting from our universities because we have high quality programs. And New Mexico is at the door of OU in January, going, $50,000 signing bonus, we'll pay off your student loans, we'll help you move. Come on. And how do we compete is the answer. And by sticking with something and providing, honestly, the piece. I just told myself I wouldn't blather, but the curriculum and the teacher support piece, you also have to make sure kids are fed. You have to make sure they have enough counselors for when things go awry and mom or dad get taken in the middle of the night and kiddo shows up not really feeling like doing math. We've got to be able to wrap around with those supports as well. If we're going to retain kids, and that's our key between our caucuses, striking the apolitical thing, if we're going to retain kids in the 3rd grade, you better have a parent in that room helping you make the decision with that. But right now, that's sort of a sticking point for people, if we're not, doing political parties. But there does have to be a period there at some point. But what you're seeing in Mississippi is it wasn't the retention piece that helped kids. It was the early identification and the providing of resources. And so I hope that we can start to lean into that. But then there's the price tag that comes with it. And I've seen $75 million and $254 million just in this week alone for a package. Great. Where does that money come from? Well, I know that we have $250 million in the Parent Choice Tax Credit that we could just end, and then boom, you're funded. My 2 cents.
Take it out of the teacher's retirement fund.
I have all kinds of opinions on that.
Yeah, same. I think to go back to the question, how do we bridge that gap between the legislature and what's actually happening in the classroom? For me, and shout out to Melissa for this, as an educator, would be to get our legislators in our classrooms. Melissa taught a lesson in my 8th grade history class a few years ago. It was.
I've been unavailable ever since. I went to the 9th grade.
Yeah, no, and I think that as an educator, we need to be mindful of telling our own stories and not allow people, not allow the noise to tell the stories for us. Again, I think that the way for me to do that is to not be afraid to invite those people into our classrooms, because they are just people. And that was a big lesson I had to learn about halfway through my career during the walkout, really, when I was crying in somebody's office previous to you. Please be a champion for educators. So I think that there's definitely ways to build those relationships, but teachers have to be willing to tell their own stories too, and that's something we have to be willing to step up and do.
That's powerful. Melissa, were you saying that we're training teachers for other states? Is that what you basically told us, is that we're training teachers and they're going to other states?
Yes, and they know that our programs, thank you. Boy, if I make it through one microphone event without somebody going, stick it right in there. Yeah, I would say that's fair. And they can offer all sorts of things. Look at Arkansas and the benefits package that it is available to teachers in Arkansas. I think you could just make that argument over and over. And we do make an effort, and I believe that the legislature understands we have to pay teachers more. Most of the legislature, some people we're still working on. But then you hear that, oh, it's over half of our budget. And I'm like, well, okay, let's have that conversation. Because you're also talking about higher ed, you're talking about career tech, you're talking about early elementary. So let's really, if you're just thinking about K-12, no, maybe 30%. And what a better way to invest,
I was just going to say, it's so true, because Oklahoma produces some of the best educators in the entire nation, and we do lose them to surrounding states. And someone who is bilingual in English and Korean, I opened up, she graduates from a master's program, had her in class, so amazing. See on Facebook, setting up her whole new classroom in Texas.
There you go.
Someone else over in Kansas. And our teachers are the heroes. They're the boots on the ground every single day. So just to highlight your point, they need to be in classrooms and having conversations, and teachers at the table. And my uncle gave me a shirt, I'll never forget it. It said, those who can teach and those who can't make laws without teaching.
Hey.
Not everybody, not everybody. But it was on a sweatshirt, so it couldn't explain everything.
I did teach as well.
That's the difference, though. But I think it strikes that nerve, though. Obviously, we got a good reaction, but it hits that nerve that we need to know that it's the teacher. It's the teacher. And again, it's the teacher that we need to be listening to and then learning from, because again, they're the ones interacting face to face with our children every single day.
I'll never forget Dr. Ballard saying, the most important thing in a child's life and success in academics is an effective teacher in every classroom. And that is, and the data report that supports that every single time, every time. And investing in our teachers, and then getting out of their way. When I was a principal, it was oh, I got a Betty Collins in my building. What do you need? Okay, here you go. And I'm just going to be over here. Let me know if you need anything.
I think it's funny, before we move on to the next question, just how much the policy does change, because it's so hard to cover from the news perspective. I don't know if you remember a text message I sent you in January. I said, you mean to tell me in the past, I think 12 years, we've held back kids, we're not holding back kids, we're held back kids, now we're thinking about, and I'm having to explain this to new reporters who aren't in from Oklahoma. Yes, we have tried this so many times. It's easy to get cross-eyed, and I'll be blunt honest, it's hard to even get the full story out, because we have to keep track of it.
Right, it's pick a lane and stick with it, for sure.
If we're waiting until third grade to intervene, we've completely missed the bus.
Right.
100%. There's so many sayings that could go along with this. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. We are spending more money on our people in prison than we are on our children in education. If we actually had priorities that said we want an improved society with better outcomes for our students, then we would reverse that completely. There is no excuse for spending more money on prisons than for our students in any world.
Well, I've got you, Ms. Willie. School boards sit at the intersection of community expectations and classroom reality. From a governance perspective, what decisions have the greatest impact on student learning, and how can boards better align policy, funding, and accountability with what teachers and students actually need?
Yeah, thank you. So I would say, and this is maybe sounds a little bit hokey, but I would say that truly the decisions that have the greatest impact on student learning is when people who are making those decisions wake up every day thinking of all of our students and their uniqueness and their diversity, and intentionally focusing on making decisions on their behalf, and never focusing on what gets me reelected or puts money in my pocket or advances my personal cause. So if our choices are truly to be made on behalf of students, it will always be thinking about those students before we make any decisions. And I would argue that there aren't a lot of people who do that on a day-to-day basis. And that is also for a government's level. I'm talking genuinely. When we go in to make votes on whatever is before us, if we are not truly thinking about those kids, every one of them as much as we possibly can, and what's the greatest good, then we shouldn't be there. And I don't care if you're at the state capitol or in a tiny school board in, Durant, Culver, Oklahoma. It doesn't matter. You should be thinking of those kids and every one of them. And I would say the greatest impact, is just truly around that. But in Tulsa Public Schools, we do something that's a little different, I think, than most schools as far as how our board works. We call ourselves student outcomes focused governance model. And so part of that question is about how we make sure that we are focusing on improving those outcomes. And what we do is that every single decision we make ties back to the strategic plan that we developed with our community. So our superintendent is evaluated based on those goals that we created, and those are directly tied to the outcomes from students. So students take tests around, say, literacy. We have multiple goals around literacy. Our superintendent knows that she is going to be evaluated, or he sometime in the future maybe, is going to be evaluated based on how those students are doing. So every decision our superintendent then makes and brings to us better reflect an opportunity to advance that. So when there's funding questions, also funding is tied back to our student outcomes. So if you bring something forward to us that we can't see a clear line between this purchase and those outcomes, then it's our responsibility to ask questions. Why do we need this? Why are we having this conversation? Why are we chasing this next new thing if what we're actually focused on is this? And if we're seeing improvements, tell us how this is actually going to move the dial toward the things that we've created as goals. So from my perspective, one of the best things that school boards can do is actually focus on student outcomes. I know that sounds crazy, and you would think that that's what school boards do, but it's really not. There's a lot of time spent in school board meetings across the state and the country talking about two-ply toilet paper, or which color of car you need to buy for your white fleet, or you pick it. Who's going to be the next cheerleading coach? Those aren't conversations that school boards need to have. We need to be asking the hard questions about the outcomes. What is the superintendent doing to make sure that she's reaching the goals that we've set for her that came from our community, and then just make sure that we're giving our administration the ability to focus on what matters, make the thing. And that's all.
If I can ask a follow-up, did anybody have if I can ask a follow-up, we've seen both sides of the political aisle come with pitchforks. It's almost like wrestling smackdown almost. How do we cool down the school board to get it back to where it needs to be?
I think that's a great question, and I think that when people recognize what the actual job of a school board is to do, that is huge. And I also think that we have to expect more as consumers as voters, and we have to expect more from the people who are coming with those pitchforks. So as a voter, I can't be okay with someone who is throwing someone under the bus in order to advance their political career or their campaign. So if I'm seeing someone who it looks as though they're bringing those pitchforks out during a campaign cycle, and they're picking a school or a subject or a political, a cultural war over their campaign process that involves children, then that's enough for me to say I'm not interested. And I think that's what everyone has to do. If your politician who you are voting for is not focused on actual policy and outcomes on behalf of the people in our state, including our students, then they shouldn't even be on your radar.
I'm going to add to that. There is, everyone is seeing, thank you. Everyone has seen on television folks showing up at your local school board meeting and creating chaos. And that has led to folks not wanting to run for office that rise to the rigor and level of the school, past and present. Are you still on the school board? You're not anymore? Okay. People willing to run, yeah. People willing to run for school board. You never have been?
No, she
Oh, I was like, wait.
She served her time.
Sorry.
She served her
You did
time.
your time.
She did her sentence.
Yes. But there's a real gun shyness about even being willing to step up and run and put your name on the ballot for an unpaid position, which means your personal information is also public. And there's honestly been a culture of fear and intimidation that's been targeted at our school boards. We do have a piece of legislation, I have a piece of legislation that's running through that grants the same type of protections from doxing and harassment and bullying that I enjoy as a state level official, and make sure that municipal bodies also have those protections. And it seems like such a simple thing. I don't know why they weren't included to begin with, but we are really experiencing across the state people going, well, that's where people come to blow up things and create live streams and create drama. I don't want any part of that. And we've got to get good, solid people willing to volunteer their time, willing to step up again, and the protections that we can afford them is something that we should do.
Ms. Collins, what does it mean for what does meaningful educator voice actually looks like in education decision making, and where is Oklahoma still falling short in ensuring classroom perspectives shape policy?
So for me, meaningful educator voice means that teachers are involved early in the process, and not just asked to react to a decision after it's already been made. When educators are included in the process from the beginning, we can do things like identify the actual timeline that something is going to take, because we know the kids that are in our classrooms, right? We know the things like who is coming to school hungry, who is homeless, whose parents might have gotten into a fight the night before, and who is coming to us, in a level of trauma. We don't, like I said earlier, it's not just about understanding like the instruction or curriculum. It's also about understanding students and their needs and what they come to us with. I think for me, when I go to the Capitol and advocate on behalf of my students, I'm always thinking, what is this going to look like at 7:40 in my first hour, in the 8th grade classroom? What's this policy that's coming down the pike actually going to look like? And I think that's kind of where we're falling short in Oklahoma. And of course, that's not just unique to Oklahoma, is that our educator feedback is often seen as, or educator input is often seen as feedback instead of like partnership. And so I think, again, those conversations have to be implemented early and frequently, and they have to be student-centered. Luckily, in my district union, we've done a fairly good job of avoiding a lot of the culture wars. I am privileged to be on a lot of district leadership teams, and that'd be something that I'd like to see implemented in other districts across the state, allowing teachers that autonomy to both be, do what's best for them in their own classrooms, but also to be allowed to be the college educated professionals that we are allowed to be, or that we went to college to be. Let us be that person in the classroom. And yeah, so just going back to like, what does that look like, you know, in the everyday classroom? How do we make sure that teachers also aren't afraid to step up and be that voice? I think calming things down at the state level has really helped with that, and it's going to take a while to repair that trust. But repairing that trust is also another thing that would be, you know, instrumental in making sure that happens.
Let me follow up with you on that, and I'm free to turn your mic off.
Sure.
Do you feel the situation has gotten so desperate that you must run for an office? We've seen so many teachers, Democrat and Republican, that the only way you are heard is you must run.
The answer is yes.
As a history teacher, can I plead the fifth?
Oh, sure.
No, I mean, yeah, I'm tempted to run from time to time. Thankfully, I have the absolute best state representative in the state that I am just absolutely blessed to have. So yeah, I'm not tempted in that way, shape, or form at all. But I think it's not necessarily running for office, but it's about not being afraid to be political. And being political doesn't necessarily mean Republican or Democrat, it just means being involved in the political process, right? We're a democratic nation. Teachers have to realize that everything that happens in our classroom is political, from what happens at the school board level to the state level to the national level. So it's just about being aware and being able to be our own best advocate.
Thank you. And we will get to the Q&A now.
All right. Hi all, my name is Miriam Lowe. I am a product of Oklahoma education. I'm born and raised Tulsa. I'm 21 years old. I graduated from Mingo Valley Christian in 23. So granted, I am a product of private education. I'm so blessed, but also it's a really small school, so my math skills, awful. Anyways, I'm also a movement partner of the Builders Organization, which is a nationally renowned movement that promotes civil disagreement and overcoming toxic polarization. So from the nonpartisan, respectful disagreement side of this event today, thank you all for just being willing to talk with each other and have these different backgrounds. I just respect that so much. I'm also competing in the Miss Oklahoma competition, and my platform is the Builders Organization. And this year, I've been able to speak to thousands of students and breaking down what that looks like in a really simplified level for students to be able to disagree respectfully and to recognize each other's different viewpoints and respect them. But I do have the privilege of asking you all some questions from the audience today. I think we're starting with mine because I wanted to. Wait, or was mine at the end? I don't know. Where'd it go? Oh, okay. So, as a college student, I am very well versed with ChatGPT. And you are all very experienced and knowledgeable about the world of education up to this point, but we've got the rise of AI. What are your concerns about how that will affect the classroom, and how do you anticipate that this will change students' abilities to think critically and write creatively? To anyone who wants to talk about it.
Yeah, so AI is a tool just like any other tool. So for me as a history teacher, history is just literacy in a historical setting, right? So all we do is read and write. It's about teaching students about when is the proper way to use, ChatGPT or whatever AI that is next. And when you have to be able to do your own thinking. And I think a lot of that is just calling kids out. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, this is my 18th year in the classroom, it's fairly obvious when the students use Google to answer a question versus when it's like their own 8th grade thinking. I think I asked a kid today what fundamental meant, because he used it in an answer, and I'm like, I know you don't know what that means. And he admitted, right? He said, yeah, I don't know what that means. I'm like, okay, so I know you know, right, what that means. He's like, yeah, I'm not getting credit for this question, right? So, it's just about using it as a teaching moment. AI is not going away. It's the wave of the future, and so we have to be willing to embrace it. And again, just let students know that it's a tool, just like any other tool that they have in their tool belt.
If I may ask a follow-up on that. So we know AI gets smarter as it learns. Do you feel you have to be just even more on guard every other day? You've got to be just a little more sharper.
I mean, I teach 14-year-olds, so yes. I feel like I have to do that anyway, but yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's also being part of being a professional educator, is being on the wave of the future, right? So whether that means the latest literacy curriculum, you know, being aware of what that is, or being aware of what the latest AI technology is. But yeah, short answer, yes.
I just want to say, I think one of the most important things that we have to do with our students when it comes to AI is teach them the environmental impacts. And I've actually seen several high school students who have decided that they should really be cautious about using AI until we find better ways to make sure we've supported our planet around the use of that. So our kids are smart, you know, when they know that just, you know, asking a silly question to AI is probably not the best answer.
Thank you, guys. Garrett from the audience wants to know, what's the best advice you can give to parents to help both students and teachers secure a better learning environment?
Ms. Wilkinson?
Oh, goodness. We absolutely view our parents as partners with our teachers. And so, yes, it's come to parent-teacher conferences, ask questions, be a part of the educational process. We welcome parents as partners in our schools. We want to encourage. And so, yes, ask your questions and start with your teachers. It's funny to me, now that I'm at our district office, that I have some parents that come to me to ask questions. I'm thinking, did you ask your teacher that first? I mean, our teachers want to connect with their families, and so absolutely reach out.
I'll add a little bit of that as well. Whenever I was a principal, I absolutely loved working with the parents all the time. But I think it's important to also remind parents that, you know, sometimes it's difficult. They're busy with multiple jobs and can't always be at school, but we can have a partnership, even if that doesn't mean that you're on the PTA or that doesn't mean that you're coming to all of the meetings. So yes, we want that. So first and foremost, go to your teacher, go to your principal, have those conversations and figure out ways that you can be involved. And then on the education side, it's also equally as important to remember that our parents bring so much wealth and knowledge as well into our classrooms as volunteers, as reading partners, as strategic planners, and that this can look very different based on wherever you are in rural settings, urban, suburban settings. But I think just remembering that it's that partnership that isn't necessarily always being present in school, but that can be present through another way or avenue as well. But it's just communication. Everyone wants some belonging.
I want to add just one statement to that. That's absolutely true. And we always say teachers bring a level of expertise to the table, right? We have this training experience, but parents they're the expert in their children. So we would be foolish not to welcome that expertise into the equation. We're only going to be more successful together.
Also, I must tell you that my Spanish name was Margarita. I've been thinking, well, I went to a private Christian school and I thought choosing an alcoholic beverage of a name would push the envelope a little bit. I don't know. We'll continue. Chris from the audience wants to know, how do you, from your respective line of work or position, help foster belonging for all students despite headlines that deter many from belonging?
I say it. Yeah. I say it all the time. I will stand up in the face of anyone who says otherwise and tell them that they're wrong. I make sure anytime I have an opportunity to speak publicly that I remind kids that they're all welcome here and that we're here for them, regardless of who they are, where they come from, what they look like, what language they speak, who they prefer to date. However they were born, we are there for them because that is our job, it's our responsibility, and it's part of our Constitution.
I think it's also important, I'm sorry, Cheryl, I think it's also important at the state to remind folks that you're walking in a building that you built with your money. And I had kids from Union Alt-Ed in my office this week, and they're like, do we even belong here? And I'm like, you paid for this chair. So yes, and own it and tell me exactly what it is that you want me to know and ask me hard questions. And I think, you know, to Stacey's point, it's like in all spaces, you know, Oklahomans belong, and every person that walks through the door in a school or at the Capitol, you know, they've paid for that space to be able to exist in, and that space deserves to be a safe space.
Now, as going to say the number one goal in our strategic plan is offering a safe and welcoming environment for students. And we all know educational theory, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We have to make sure students feel safe and welcome before we're ever going to teach them anything academic. It's the foundation for anything else that we can do.
I think it's also just being incredibly specific whenever we're not talking about this is my classroom or my school or my teacher, this is ours. And to your point, I mean, these are the public dollars that have paid for this though, but just to be able to celebrate the individual, who they are, what they bring to the table, again, being that asset-based focus and just being celebratory, and it changes from just being curious about other people, but being fascinated by learning by them and alongside them. And it's not just who's at the table, but also who's not there. And how do we ensure to create that collective impact where it's all of us? Because the reality is, like, we're just a lot better together.
I love that you said our kids, that shift from my students to our kids. One thing that our school has been really focusing on is that shift too, right? It's not just what happens in your classroom, it's what happens in the whole building. And I think just bridging that, like making it completely wider, not just happens in your school, but in your community and in your city and in your state and in your nation. So yeah, I love that, our kids.
Senate leaders recently announced a plan to redirect a portion of teacher retirement system contributions to fund 2,500 teacher pay raises, I didn't say that right, and other priorities. What are the potential long-term risks or benefits of using retirement stabilization funds this way?
Well, there's a reason they're called retirement stabilization funds, because the retirement fund was not stable for a long time, and we committed to investing in it so that it would be there for teachers. We borrowed from the teachers' retirement plan before, and have paid it back most of the time. But there's a $2,500 pay raise. It's nice, but that is not the meaningful raise we're looking for. That is, you don't have to order off the dollar menu like every day of the week, sort of a thing. And I don't mean to be facetious or small, but in a meaningful way to make teachers stay here when they're in New Mexico and Texas and Arkansas and Kansas are calling. We're going to have to be more thoughtful about it. Now, there are several pieces to that $254 million package. What is not evident is how you're going to pay for it next year. State law says once you give a teacher a raise, you can never take it back. And so you have to provide that every single year. So is the teacher's retirement package going to be $254 million every single year? No. And so it's a lovely idea, a lovely jumping off ramp. But that one piece I'll point out and try to remain apolitical is that there's $25 million of that goes to raising the cap for the parent-teacher tax credit, or the parent choice tax credit, which is like a voucher towards private schools. And it's challenging for me to consider public teacher dollars paying for private school. Or one might say that's a flex that I didn't expect. And so I believe in the House there's not the appetite to do that. I hope. But we're gonna have to pay for it one way or the other. Mississippi paid for it up front with a public-private partnership year one to the tune of $100 million, and then the state legislature kicked in more, but they have consistently reinvested over time. The money is there. It's what you choose to invest in. Last year, for example, we appropriated $5 million to move the USS Batfish. Anybody ever heard of the Batfish? Thank you. We appropriated $5 million to move the USS Batfish from its location near Muskogee, so it's landlocked, 5 miles to its new location. $5 million. If we can do that, we can come up with a long-term fund for kids. And so it's all a matter of choices.
Thank you.
Politics off.
Yeah. Do you have an answer?
Well, I just, I mean, whenever you graduate from college, and if you don't have family here, it might be difficult to think, why am I going to stay specifically in Oklahoma? If you do have family, maybe you are going to stay. But if you're really thinking long-term, and now you're considering, all right, I am graduating with a bachelor's degree in education, I want to be a teacher, what's going to keep me here, especially long-term, knowing that these are conversations that impact my reality whenever I do get to retire one day. And so I think it's also just good to be cognizant that there are a lot of incredible young talent out there that we want to give them more reasons beyond the scope of pre-K through 12 or university education to be able to stay here, because you can live here, you can exceed here, you can excel here, you will be taken care of here. And so that has a ripple effect and a cyclical effect when it comes to retaining and maintaining these fantastic educators here in Oklahoma.
Speaking of Mississippi, someone asks in the audience, I've read a lot about the literacy gains that many southern states like Mississippi have made recently. Are those gains real? If so, what are those states doing that Oklahoma should adopt?
I'll make it really fast, but then I see Cheryl Wilkinson wanting to say something. So they invested for the long haul. Simple. When you look over what Mississippi done, we have done something in that plan. Every piece of that plan we have done, but they stuck with it. They're sticking with it. They continue to invest. That's the piece that's missing. And so if we're truly going to make gains, none of it is brand new, but the choice to continue at investment is.
Ms. Wilkinson.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It takes the long-term planning and the long-term investment. I will say too, some of what Mississippi has done is invest in coaching. I mentioned a literacy coach earlier, and Melissa brought up that there's a plan in our plan to invest in coaching, but there is good coaching research that we need to follow as well. If you have an instructional coach or a literacy coach, and they come alongside a teacher, and Betty, you can say, if you had a state level coach come into your classroom that you didn't know or have a relationship with, it would be very hard for that coach to have any sort of impact in that classroom. You have to build relationships just like you would with a football coach, any of the coaches that we know. So I'm concerned about investing in coaching that's not going to follow good coaching research and good coaching practice. I want coaches that will make the difference. Good coaching and good day-by-day support for teachers will make a difference, but they have to be homegrown, and they have to stay in those schools long term and be there on the daily to really make the impact. So I do believe in coaching. I believe in so many things in this investment in literacy, but we have to do them well. We can't just slap another thing on the wall that we hope will work.
May I ask a follow-up to that? Because it's come up a couple of times. We keep saying, well, Mississippi stuck with it.
Yep.
Let's say Oklahoma would have kept with it. Would we have seen the same results, do you believe?
We were there. We were ranked 17th in the nation, and then we started cutting our budget. We were there. We know what we're doing. We know how to do it. We just need to go back to the model. I want to say in 2008, that's when we started cutting the budget and started going after teachers. And so you deprofessionalize the conversation around teachers and the necessity for funding. It's just not hard, and we have the talent that we need. We have everything we need right here. And so I guess the answer is, this isn't hard, it's a choice.
I was going to say that too. It took us a long time to get here too. We didn't get here overnight. We're not going to get out of here overnight. It's going to be a long time coming.
I think oftentimes education is the only profession that is seen as a sub-profession, because everyone has gone to school, they have some connection to school, and it always kind of takes away that level of professionalism. And so it's always, whenever I get to be and interact with educators, I say, you are educational professionals. Say it over and over and over. You are the educational professional. Just because I brush my teeth does not make me a dentist. Just because you went to school does not make you an educator. We need to make sure that not only are we investing, but we are listening to, we're celebrating. There are so many things for us to be concerned about, for sure, but there's also a lot to celebrate with great superintendents and great boards who are working together, who do want to make sure that we are investing in our students And I was fortunate to work in a very special school. Also Title I, there was just a plethora of people that were at that school, but I just say this because we have a precedent where we did not even introduce English formally until 3rd grade, and every single child passed the 3rd grade reading test in English. So if we know that we have pockets of success and we have patterns and we know what does actually work, I think it goes back to what you're talking about, where we have to have our priorities checked. And we know we can do this. We just have to make the decision that we're going to do it, and then we're going to stick with it and have teachers included in the conversation every step of the way, alongside our families.
Thank you. Just due to time, this is going to be our last question of the night, but I'm sure all these panelists would be willing to have conversations if you have more to ask. This is a question I'm specifically excited for the answer. Our online audience asked Dr. Forbes to explain in Spanish for our Spanish-speaking audience. Why does the language a student speaks still determine the opportunities they receive in school?
You repeat the question one more time?
Mm-hmm. Why does the language a student speaks still determine the opportunities they receive in school?
Bueno, el idioma que habla cualquier estudiante es una fortaleza, es una fuerza para este estudiante, y el que no tiene nada que ver con su trayectoria en lo que van a poder lograr, solamente expande las oportunidades que nuestros estudiantes pueden tener y obtener dentro de nuestro sistema escolar, en pre-kinder hasta el 12º grado, pero más allá también en las universidades. Así que es algo muy importante para nosotros, que tenemos que entender que para las familias bilingües ahí en sus casas ahora en este momento, escuchando lo que está pasando en la educación, que ustedes sí importan. Es que necesitamos que ustedes estén leyendo también en sus casas en cualquier idioma, porque la lectura que nos ayuda también es una oportunidad para compartir no solamente cómo se aprende uno, sino cómo conectar también esa parte del idioma y también la cultura a la vez, para que estemos mejores juntos y estamos siguiendo aprendiendo uno del otro siempre así. Pero no importa cualquier idioma, que sea el inglés, o que sea el español, o que sea como chino o cualquier otro idioma, es que sí importa poder hablar más que un idioma. Eso es algo altamente importante. Y también yo creo que recuerden que una persona bilingüe vale por dos.
Tell us in English now?
Yeah. It's like your whole
You have
personality
AI for
changes.
that.
Margarita got 15 words about it.
Welcome to the half of our kids' rooms.
Yeah, that's what a whole lot of kids feel like every single day. I know as a brand new teacher, I would send a quote-unquote EL thought of the day to teachers, and I said, I feel like I'm the language learner because there's MTSS, there's a VIP, there's an OSTP, there's an IBP, there's an ELAP, there's all these different acronyms, and I felt like I was learning the language of school. But to answer that question, it just doesn't matter what language you speak or how many languages that you speak. It's the fact that you can, and that a person who is bilingual is worth two people at one time. And it's just an incredible opportunity to learn different skills, different things that we can learn from different communities, from different cultures, and the processes of acquiring language, acquiring literacy, acquiring numeracy, what that looks like, but also how that is incorporated in our learning about history and our learning about science and our investments that we can make overall. But knowing more than one language is only going to be a benefit, but it's also neither determination of your educational outcome. And one last thing, I'll just put a pin in on this, is that language proficiency does not equate cognitive ability.
Yeah.
Mic drop.
I was going to say, we can't beat that. So.
Awesome. Well, what a great conversation. Let's give our panelists a round of applause. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Please go over and check out our table here. There are shirts, there's information on the organization, things and ways in which you can get involved. Our panelists will be around if you want to ask them some questions. We appreciate you being here. And conversations like this don't happen unless people like you show up. So thanks for showing up. Thanks for being here. We do appreciate every question, every voice, every person. We hope you have safe travels home, and we appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
Hold on. Okay, where are we looking?
I'm ready, okay? Yeah. Now we can all just work.